All right. So my computer tells me the recording is in progress. So thank you both for being here today, and thanks to everyone who's watching this later on YouTube. This is January 30th, 2023, and we are doing how to get started with PreTeXt in 2023, or at least I should say in January 2023, because we have a lot of folks working on the PreTeXt software in this community, and things are always getting better, I hope. And this is actually a huge improvement from where we were even two or three months ago. Good to see you here, Sean. So I was just telling them that we are recording right now, but please ask me any questions that you have, or any just clarifying questions you might have that might help someone who's watching this recording later, which is how to get started with PreTeXt in 2023. So, if you want to follow along, if you're here live or if you're watching this later, what you want to do is make sure you've made a GitHub account. Maybe I should have done this truly from scratch. I'll pull up an incognito window. And if you go to github.com, by default, it should give you a nice sign up button, various different places to create your free GitHub account. Once you've created your account, you could have it in dark mode or light mode. It might look a little different based on that, but otherwise you should be able to get to, here's your home page, something roughly like this. And you could search for it probably by going to PreTeXt code space. I'm completely winging this and hoping that it actually shows up. There it is. PreTeXt code space pops up. I'll also put the link in chat right now. I'll also put the link in the description of the YouTube video later, because this is our place that we are pointing to, we being me and Oscar Levin, who are kind of the folks running the front end authoring tools side of PreTeXt, which kind of get these kind of more technical tools into the hands of more authors. So what this does is PreTeXt is software. PreTeXt is software written primarily in Python, and primarily written thinking about Linux in mind, although there's been attempts at Windows support along the way, and many people do use it on Windows. However, it's always a bit finicky to kind of get it configured just right, depending on how your system's set up, depending on how your Python is set up. And what we are now doing is we're taking advantage of this new feature of GitHub called a code space. A code space is a virtual computer that runs on the internet, runs in the cloud, and you can access it through your web browser using your GitHub account. There is one more thing I should add to this tutorial, and I think I just need to Google GitHub education to find it. This is another link I should put in the description, education.github.com. It was that easy. And if you are a teacher, well, excuse me, let me actually click it. There should be teacher programs. And by teachers or researchers or anybody in the academic realm basically can sign up for the teacher academic status. It's for courses, coding clubs, nonprofit research. That's most of the folks watching this video using PreTeXt these days, at least. I was last verified as a teacher on March 28th, 2022. I think it's done it looks like it's every 2 years I have to do it to get approval. So every 2 years you go and you show them that you're still associated with a .edu address, basically. And what that does is it upgrades your free GitHub account to a pro GitHub account. And that gives you a little bit of extra resources on your GitHub account. And I highly recommend doing that, just so, because even though some of the stuff I'm going to show you today, you can do for free on GitHub with just a free account, it's limited before they'll shut it off for you and ask you to pay some money. I have not hit the limits myself, being as someone who uses PreTeXt a lot, uses GitHub Codespaces a lot. I have not hit those limits with my educator account yet. So it's pretty generous. So that would be the things I would recommend you to do before going into this too much. But once you've got both of those set up, or even before you get your educator account approved, which was very quick in my experience, is you want to go to this PreTeXt code space repository. And then I guess before I do that, I just talked a whole bunch. Any questions or clarifying comments from folks in chat at the moment?
So I'll start. I missed a step along the way. How do I get to the thing for educators?
Education.github.com. I'll put that link in chat as well. Education.github.com. And then once you go there, you go to, let me go all the way there back to the home page. Apparently it doesn't actually go back to the home page. Oh, I think it's because I'm signed in, or I clicked something. It's redirecting me. But there should be a teachers tab. It'll show up if you're watching the recording. You just go back in time, but there should be an education benefit. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and move on for now from that. So once you've got the education benefit in your GitHub account, you go to the PreTeXt code space. And there's instructions right here. You can read this and it tells you what I'm about to tell you. But basically what you want to do is that this has a few of the files that basically tells GitHub, how do I set up my PreTeXt authoring environment? You don't have to know the technical details of this. What I would do is take this template and create a new repository, something that actually belongs to me, Stephen Klontz. And you can name it whatever you want. Since I'm just making this up, I always pick the random words, but of course you should probably put my new PreTeXt project, or perhaps intro to proofs PreTeXt, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it PreTeXt code space demo, I guess. I haven't named anything that yet before. You could add a description. You can make this public or private. I highly recommend folks make things public. Unless you have a strong reason to keep things private, make it public, because if you want support from the PreTeXt community, leaking to your GitHub is by far the fastest and easiest way for us to get to the root of your issue. If your code is public, we don't have to do any guesswork. We can just go look at it. And we love to help folks that are getting into the community. So I highly recommend you make things public. If you want to make it private, you can add folks as collaborators. It's just a little bit of a roundabout if you do that. It's okay just to do the main branch. So I'll just create this repository. And this is a pretty quick process right here. Notice that it's generating it from the PreTeXt code space to make my, what I call PreTeXt code space demo. And it looks just the same as what it did, but now I actually own the repository. It took a copy of this code and gave it to me. So what I'm going to do is, now that I'm in code, I'm going to make sure I've clicked the code spaces bit here, because I want to create a code space on main. Now, what this is doing is it's creating that virtual computer I was telling you about, somewhere on a server rack, somewhere, who knows where in the cloud. A virtual computer is being booted up and files are being copied over, and a fresh Linux computer is being created for me to write with PreTeXt. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter too much that it's Linux or anything like that, because we have lots of features that mean you don't have to actually write anything on the command line unless you want to use features that we haven't yet created in the graphical user interface. But we've got most of the common patterns accessible by clicking buttons. So this does take a few moments, like I said. So maybe I'm going to pause the recording just for a second. Recording button. Okay, so it took a moment. Actually, it didn't take all that long, but just so you know, for the folks watching the recording, all this window showed up with this text editor that showed up. It showed up with black and white text before it got all the color coding. Same with all the colors over here. I could let them collect usage data. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to protect my privacy, but it's up to you whether that matters to you at the moment. Um, let's see here. Let me just kind of give you the rounds of what we're looking at. This is what's called a VS Code editor. If you're familiar with VS Code or Visual Studio Code, it's a text editor that's free and open source. You can install it on your computer, but we're actually just using it, running it out of the web browser. It's just through my Chrome, and I do recommend using Chrome and not Safari if you're on Mac, because Safari has little bits of issues here and there. But most modern web browsers can run this in the browser, and so I don't have to install anything. And what happened through this process is that you see a bunch more files than actually were here originally in the repository, because part of this boot up process was to generate all of the files that I need in order to start writing my pretext. So, in fact, you can see right here, there are 8 pending changes. Let's go ahead and dive into this, because if I ever want to save my work is saved to the code space automatically. This computer, as long as it exists on GitHub, will save this for me. That does take up some of my free resources from GitHub, so I often um, I'm not going to say that. That's more advanced usage. But what I will say is, if you no one else can see this except for you. It's like it's on your own computer, your own physical computer right in front of you, and you haven't put it on the internet anywhere. It's almost like that. It's on a secret computer that only you have access to through your GitHub account. However, if I want to share my wonderful work with the world, I need to go to source control, and I want to tell everyone that I generated my first PreTeXt project. Hooray. All right, so I write a short message that describes the changes that I've made to this project. I'm going to commit them. There are no stage changes to commit. Don't worry what that means. Just click always. And what that does is it just automatically gets all of these things committed to your version history. It stages them and commits them, are the technical terms. And then if you actually want to share it with the world, you have one more button to push, sync changes. This will push and pull all commits. And that's actually going to, if someone else made changes to your project, and once you get using collaborators, and it's not more than just you, it'll actually sync all those up. I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to say don't show me again. All right, I think that's a pretty safe thing to do, especially for beginners, to go ahead and just click always and then okay, don't show again. And what that has done is, back on this public web page, my PreTeXt Codespace demo, you can see all those files that were generated from my great book have now been created. That's all well and good, but I want to write PreTeXt. What do I do? Well, first things first, let me show you that. I mean, what PreTeXt is. PreTeXt is an XML language. You can see it here. It's open by default. There's a couple other files, project and publication. We won't worry about those too much, I think, today. The main thing we want to worry about is the main PreTeXt file, main PTX file inside of my source directory. It's a PreTeXt document, which is why PreTeXt is this root element right here. And it contains a few things. It contains some document info, or doc info, where you can define your LaTeX macros. If you're writing math equations, you can define short macros like \r for Blackboard Math R. You'll be writing your equations in LaTeX just like usual. If you want to write, this is a typo. We got to get that fixed. LaTeX image preamble. That needs to be updated. Sean, if you wanted to do me a big favor and make that an issue, you'd be my best friend. LaTeX, not latex, image preamble. All right. And then, of course, here's actually my great book. It's called The Title's My Great Book. It's an example to get you started as a subtitle. I want to see my great book. How do I see that? Well, I'm going to take my PreTeXt commands. I'm going to move them up here as well so it's easier to see them. Okay, make these a little bit bigger. So right here underneath the file editors, there's the PreTeXt commands, and I want to build the default target. If you're generating this from all the default settings, you haven't changed anything around, then you can just build a default target. Success. Run PreTeXt View Web. We don't have to run anything. We can just click a button. And if you're using VS Code, you can use the live preview or PreTeXt View command. Depending on certain people's browsers, I've found that one works better than the other. Live preview works pretty well, I say, and then it kind of has a little issue right here. I think this is something that VS Code, this is out of our hands, VS Code is working on. I would just open it in the browser. Click that green button. And you can see all these different, okay. And then usually after I do all that, I click view live preview one more time. There it goes. All right. So hopefully that won't take 2 clicks in the future, but as I said, that's a VS Code bug that we're waiting on Microsoft to fix. But there you go, a great book. It's an example to get you started, but that's not a great book. It's my greatest book. All right. So I can change my title in my PreTeXt source for the book title to be my greatest book. But if I refresh, you're not going to see that change anywhere. That's because I have not built the book. So I have to rebuild, sort of like with LaTeX, you make some changes and then you have to build the document to see those changes. But after I click build here, I can go back and refresh. And now you can see it's my greatest book. It updates at every place in the book that needs to know what the title is. Every different page of the book, this is a website, is now called my greatest book by changing it in one place here. So that is basically it in terms of how do you get started with PreTeXt. And then, you know, what do you do from here? Well, you can scroll down. Let's go ahead and add some content to a section. So my section title right here, this is a boring section. Let's call this demoing some PreTeXt features. And there's lots of features of PreTeXt. And you know, I'm one of the guys that writes like that works with the front end, like the authoring interface for PreTeXt. I can't remember all the different things you could do with PreTeXt, and I don't have time to show them all today anyway. But I am going to show off some of the things I use personally. And I'm probably going to forget something, which is good because I can show you how to get to the documentation as well. But first thing I would like to do is if I change the title, I'm going to call this maybe section demo PreTeXt. We call this an XML ID. It's this little short identifier with use letters and hyphens, and that's going to be if you want to reference it later, like in the back matter. This book was authored in PreTeXt, wasn't xref ref section demo PreTeXt. Amazing. So we use these XML IDs. I'm going to add a space here so you can see it all at the same time. Those can be cross-referenced or xrefed using the xref tag. And so now if I rebuild and refresh, let's see here. Did not work. Okay. I know what happened here. I got to go back to a different page because I changed the xref. It changed the name and it lost track of it. That explains that. So be aware that this is going to change some file names of your built HTML. So I had to navigate back to the top and then go back and find it through chapter 1. So there's the new demoing some PreTeXt features. Hello. And I added in the back matter within the colophon. Wasn't section 1.1 amazing? And it added a link back to it. What else can you do with PreTeXt right here? Of course, we want to be able to do mathematics equations. A lot of our users are writing mathematics documents or other STEM documents. So let's add in some equations. Hello. And by using M tags, you create your inline mathematics equation. And now I should just be able to refresh. There it goes, beautifully typeset by MathJax in my web browser. And of course, I might want to have a bigger equation. What is it? X equals fraction negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac 2a. I became a mathematician because I didn't want to memorize that. So I wanted to figure it out on the fly if I needed it. And now I've used it so many times. That should make ME will make this, if I rebuild, a display math equation, as you can see here. And it even put that little period next to it. Right there. Finally, maybe I want to draw a diagram. All right, let's put in an image. Well, first of all, we'll call it a figure. And there's some auto completion here. 80% figure, call it a circle. So I think that's what I can remember how to write in TXZ offhand. And then a LaTeX image. again, TXT picture. I'm going to draw a circle. I can remember how to do that in TXT. Draw 0, 0, circle 3. If I recall correctly, that should draw a circle centered at the origin of radius 3. We're going to find out. Now, if I try to build this and refresh, it's going to have some source right here. It's not going to show anything. I forgot to give it a caption. That was rude of me. So let me give it a caption. My caption is a circle. The other thing I forgot is that LaTeX images describe a more general type of image. So one thing that's nice is that you see that some auto-completing happening as I'm typing here. It's going to give you suggestions on how to complete things. So this is my circle TXT. And this description is meant for readers that may not be able to actually see the image, like a blind reader. So this is like alt text, if you're familiar with that. So I should tell them a circle of radius 3, centered at the origin. And now that the LaTeX image information is stuck inside the image element, that should be able to build, refresh. All right, and I'm almost there. The last piece of the puzzle is you don't actually see that circle of, you see that alt text that the blind reader, the screen reader user would hear, but you don't actually see the image, and that's because I haven't generated that image. Going back over here to main.ptx, I need to generate that asset. So I'm going to click Generate Assets. And I know this is not going to work. I just realized because I have not installed LaTeX. The necessary program, yes. PreTeXt, yes. Error. Generating that particular asset requires LaTeX to be installed. And I do not have LaTeX installed on this virtual computer. Now, this is something you could do, but it would take a while. So I'm not going to actually do that today. So let's see. I'm trying to remember. Generate assets help.md. Where'd you go? If you need to generate assets like LaTeX image or SagePlot, you have to have some additional software installed. This is just part of that help documentation we provide you. To install these inside the code space, copy the following command and paste it into the terminal and hit enter. And so this is what I would do, is I would copy this into the terminal. I would allow it to paste into the terminal, and I would hit enter. This is going to take a while though, so I'm not going to do that. Sean, since you're here, do you happen to remember an easy asymptote code? You can use asymptote code instead of LaTeX code to draw a circle.
I would have to copy and paste.
All right, asymptote circle. I can do that too. Is this a circle? Okay, yes. So I'm just getting this off of a guide somewhere on the internet. Draw a circle of radius. We'll make that radius 3 to match my alt text. So that's as simple as changing LaTeX image to asymptote instead. The reason this is going to work is because we use a web service to generate the asymptote image. So I'll make this a circle of radius 3. And now if I generate my assets, all right. And now if I refresh, oh, I have to rebuild, then refresh. So you got to generate and then build. Something went wrong here. That's what I get for going off script. All right. Let's see here. Let me pause for just a second for the viewers at home. All right, so I figured out the issue. The issue was, and obviously, it's January 2023. Hopefully when I record this again in 4 or 5 months, we'll have some better error messaging to kind of indicate what happened here. I forgot the semicolon. I don't write a lot of asymptote. I didn't know every command had to end with a semicolon, just like in TXZ. I did not have a semicolon at the end there, and that choked asymptote. But by adding that semicolon, I was able to go back to my PreTeXt commands. Where did those go? I was able to click generate assets. I'll show you that it's working. I'll just regenerate the assets for web. Command finished. Build the default target again. And then going back to my section, I have my circle as promised right here. So I've created a great book. I would love to share this with the world. If you took this URL and paste it into your browser, you could see the same book on a bigger screen, and that's all well and good. But if I pasted this into somebody else's web browser, or even my own that's not logged into GitHub, it's going to ask me to sign in. It's only going to show it to me. And I can't just run this server forever. I can't just keep this out on the internet forever. I've got to deploy it. Oops, I think I closed the window I needed. That's the one I needed. So if you close your code space window, it's pretty quick to boot back up. It just has to reconnect to that computer in the cloud, and it has to reactivate everything into your browser. But I think I've got a really great book. Now, if I click through here and I like everything that I see, then what I might want to do is deploy it. So by going back to, in this menu right here, we're working on getting it to appear all the time in your project. Right now, it only shows up if you're editing a .ptx file. So keep on, I apologize that kind of jumps away and back as you click away and back, but just go back to any PreTeXt file, .ptx file. And if you want to deploy to GitHub, all of the synchronization to GitHub is done for you automatically because you're using a code space. Oh, Sean has a great example. Before I do this, something even cooler. Let's do a fun three-dimensional example. So we'll do this one loaded fast enough, I guess. So we'll do you. All right. So here's a more involved asymptote image. So I'll regenerate that. I think probably why you put that in chat, Sean, is that this is three-dimensional. This is showing off a nice feature of asymptote and other three-dimensional pictures as well. If I generate and build that and go back to my section where I demoed the features, oh dear, it would have been so cool if it worked. All right, that's what I get for doing this live. I'm gonna try this one more time with different. Oh, I closed it, of course. All right, we're going back to the circle. 3D asymptote needs to be in a virtual server. I do not know what that means, but we'll figure that out later, Sean. So in any case, we'll go back to the simpler circle that I know is working right now. All right, there's a circle I wanted to share with the world. Okay, then we will go to a PreTeXt file, and then we will go to, we've got it looking the way we want. I've just got to deploy to GitHub. It's just one click right there. Except I can't do that unless I've actually committed my changes. I've got this little thing yelling at me at the source control saying, you made changes to your PTX source. In fact, I can view them. Here, let me close out this preview window. I can see exactly what I changed. I fixed the LaTeX to latex typo. My great book is now my greatest book. And I've put a lot more information in that section, demoing some PreTeXt features, and added a cross-reference. I need to commit and stage those changes. Because I didn't put a message, it says, please enter the commit message for your changes. All right, so I could type it here, or I could just close it out and then go back over here and actually say, add in my first section, something like that. Synchronize those changes. And now if I go back to my PreTeXt file, I can deploy to GitHub. And you'll see, if you scroll down here to the output, get it all viewable at the same time, the output, latest build successfully pushed to GitHub. To enable GitHub pages, visit this page. These days, it does that automatically. I have not had to set up GitHub pages, but it's possible you could have turned it off by accident. That's where you go to fix that. Most of the time, I want to go to visit this actions page to check on the status of your GitHub pages deployment. So I'll follow that link. And we'll see right here that on my public GitHub, it's building that website, the one that I just saw for myself. It's trying to put that on a web server somewhere, the free GitHub Pages hosting service. It's checked off, which means now, if I go down, your built project will soon be available to the public at GitHub Codespace Demo. And this link, I'll put it in chat. It's something anybody on the internet can visit. Demoing some PreTeXt features. Hello, and this circle. So, I think maybe the last thing I want to do is that we did a bunch of work to create a website. There are easier ways to make websites. I haven't shown you nearly all the features we can use. Let's see here. How do I get a Sage cell? So first of all, if I want to learn something new, I go to I look for the PreTeXt guide. That's autocomplete in my browser. I don't want to do that. I want to Google for the PreTeXt guide. And here, this took me to pretextbook.org. The PreTeXt guide is online. That's the version that you probably want to use because it has a really nice search feature. And I want a Sage cell. So that's one of the features I want to show off to you. Oh, it didn't work. Let's just search for just Sage. Let's look at one of these Sage pages. All right. Sage tag. You have an input and an output. Content of the input is presented statically. All right. So this is reminding me what I need to know. Sage is what I'm looking for. Let's put this in my features. Oh, this is a read-only editor, it says. Let me go back to the actual main PTX. That's Sage. I'm going to close the Sage. Everything in XML and therefore PreTeXt has to have a starting and ending tag unless it's self-closing. Like you can do this for short if there's nothing inside of it. It's the same thing as this. But most of the time you want content inside of it. In this Sage, I want an input of 2 plus 2. And of course, that should output 4. Let's build that. Let's view that through the live preview. And if I go back to that section, here we have 2 plus 2, and if I evaluate that using Sage, that should be 4. 2x plus 2x, that should be 4x. And if I show it, this is all just a bunch of Sage math code. It looks pretty. And I can square things. It should be 4x squared. There we go. So, really nice for interactive code snippets. If you want your students in your book to be able to run code, you can provide that code for them. And I'll explain what this output was for later. Well, I'll tell you right now because I don't get to it. This output would be, you can't run the code for your in a PDF. And so if you're writing for a PDF, this is what it would say as the output if you want to display that automatically. All right. Again, I made another change. I want to commit that change. Added a Sage cell. Commit that change. Sync that change. And now going back to the main.ptx in the file browser, I want to deploy that to GitHub. And if I go here to my actions, I can see it's got another build because I've pushed another build to GitHub and it's in the progress. I can even see exactly what it's doing. It's built it. It's got a couple of post build steps it's got to do. And as soon as that deploy is finished, I can go back to my book. It's thinking about it. Click it and get all the gory details. But really impatient. But it's completed the job. And now if I go back to my public book and refresh, it's now got that sage cell. 2 plus 2 plus 7 is 11. All right. Let's see here. So I think, let me go pause for a second and ask the folks who are here if they have any questions or for suggestions on what I might want to do next in the recording. Okay, so behind the scenes, I installed LaTeX because I wanted to show off that, you write in PreTeXt not just to produce your accessible HTML. You may want to print, a book on a dead tree somewhere. And so I installed LaTeX, so I should be able to build my my PDF. Now, if I just try to build my PDF, first things first, this is January 2023. This is how you're supposed to be able to do it. Instead of the default target, you should be able to build your print target, which is the default name of the PDF for a new project. And it's going to do this, and it's going to say it worked, but it actually doesn't. You can go here to the output and see that it's not showing the print version, unfortunately. So that's not working at the moment. So I apologize for that. In the meantime, here's the thing you can cast in the terminal. Just go to your terminal after that fails and go PreTeXt build print. It's just basically doing the same thing as clicking this build print button. You just type it out, PreTeXt build print, and that actually runs the LaTeX. Now, if you see, it didn't actually work. If I tried to view the PDF, it would look bad because there's a LaTeX warning. It didn't find the circle PDF. That's because I built the assets for web, not for PDF. And so I need to generate the assets for print first. All right, looks like that's finished. And then I can, again, can't click the button. I've got to actually type out PreTeXt build print. I just pressed up to make it refill what I just saw. And now it was a success. The output was written. There were no errors. And now if I go to view, view is only going to let me view the default, isn't it? Oh, PreTeXt view command lets me view the print. Yeah, so the live preview only lets you do the one thing. If I do view print, there's the main PDF. And there's my greatest book, an example to get you started. And so the exact same content in my website is now in this printable PDF. There's my equations, there's my circle, and then here's my sage cell that says 2 plus 2 equals 4. Now, obviously, it's not having any regard for page breaks or anything like that. And so, generally speaking, what I recommend folks is, I build for web first and foremost, and then I'll kind of clean it up if I decide, oh, I should add a paragraph here just to bump this to the next page because I think the PDF looks better. This kind of tweaking I do kind of at the last minute, but all the content is there, and that's ultimately what's important, even if the page break leaves something to be desired. Oh, here's that section 1.1 cross-reference. It still works in the PDF. The idea is that you wrote it once and you can read it in anywhere. And so all the features travel through all the different output formats as much as we can possibly do. Of course, one of the big reasons you write in PreTeXt is because you write that same bit of code and it produces the PDF, it produces the HTML, and it produces many other things that you can't produce in the code space is not in January 2023 but maybe we'll get those up and running for you in code spaces or some other newfangled, elegant format in the future. But know that if you invest in writing your code in PreTeXt, you could produce Braille, you could produce Jupyter notebooks, you could produce um, various other output formats from the single same source, because you're describing your content semantically based on what it means, not on specifically how it should look, because it's going to look very different in these different output formats. Especially, you changing your font color means nothing to the Braille reader. You just want to say this is an emphasized word or something like that, and that's what we can translate into Braille for a blind reader. So that is about that. I think that might be everything that I had prepared for today. This is enough to get you started. Just as a reminder, most ways people learn PreTeXt is like people learn LaTeX. You take documents that you know work and look good. Let's take, for example, good old active calculus. If you find that you like an activity in active calculus, how do we measure velocity? Here's a PreTeXt book, and it has some motivating questions. How do I do that in PreTeXt? Well, active calculus is a good open source document. And so if I think I have to go to learn more. And if I go to learn more, I'm just going to, GitHub, source code on GitHub. There it is, active calculus on GitHub. Now, if I want to see, what was it I was trying to get? Motivating questions from sec11vel. I can go into their source. I can look for sec11vel. And they're motivating, it was objectives. That's how they did it, was through this objective thing. I'm going to copy that over to my document. I'm going to put that at the beginning of my chapter. And I'm going to build. Let's see what happens. Build the default target. Build that HTML. I need to regenerate the assets for web, excuse me, and then build the web. Success, refresh. And now if I go to the chapter title, now they're called objectives and not motivating questions. There's some other configuration that I could dig around for in the header of the active calculus text. But that's a really great way. If you have a PreTeXt book that has a feature that you like, most PreTeXt authors are sharing their stuff on GitHub. If you can find their GitHub source, copy, paste, and amend to do what it is you want to do. And of course, not if all else fails, the other main thing you could do is go to pretextbook.org, documentation, or to search for the PreTeXt guide on the Google, and you'll find your way here. And if I want to find motivating questions, see if that shows up. Motivating questions. No, that's not showing up anything. Maybe I have to do search for objectives. Search through here. Blocks. It's returning objectives. Okay. So this one's having a little bit trouble finding right now. So there's one other thing that I do when I have trouble finding stuff that I'm looking for in the guide, is I go to something called the PreTeXt schema. PreTeXt schema. I'll just Google for that. That auto-completed because I've been to that website before. PreTeXt schema. Again, that just shows up at the beginning of the Google results. And now if I want to learn about anything like the objectives, I can just scroll down here to objectives, and it shows me everything I can do with the objectives. Where I can put it, I can go in an appendix, an article, a chapter, a section, a subsection, a sub-subsection. And it takes a little bit of a while to parse what this page is telling you, but at least it tells you right here you have a list of every single possible thing you could put in a PreTeXt book: a task, a statement, a solution, a series, a SBS group, a wrangle, a plus minus. There's lots of different things that are supported in the current version of PreTeXt, this is a good place to kind of just Control F search for theorem. Can I put a theorem in a PreTeXt book? I absolutely can. It can have a title, it can have a creator, it can have paragraphs, or maybe a statement and a proof. And so I can add my theorem to a section. I'll put it before that Sage thing because it was making that weird page break. Theorem. And again, it auto-completed some suggestions here. I'm going to call this, Pythagorean. Let A, B, C, A, B be the legs of a right triangle, and C be its hypotenuse. Then A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Build that out. Go to that section. Here's my theorem. It can have a proof as well. I'm not going to actually prove it. If I build that and refresh, we see that that proof is what we call a nulled proof. And so the default way to display proofs is to hide them. And you can click on them to reveal them in the HTML version. Quite a few different things are nulled by default. I think if I put an example in here, examples are nulled by default as a whole thing. So I can click to expand. And this is all configurable. Things you can look up in the guide to determine what is going to be nulled by default. But that is what we call a publisher decision, not an author decision, because it doesn't change your actual content that you're writing. It's just changing the presentation of that content. So just a quick bit of, let's wrap this up for a purpose of the video, is I want to point out a few more files that I kind of glossed over. One of them is the project PTX file. This is not something that you probably want to mess with much as a beginner, but all that web print LaTeX stuff, all of that is just defined in this project manifest. This project PTX file is basically what tells the PreTeXt software, hey, this is a PreTeXt project. So there are various things, like if you have a weird, installation of LaTeX that needs special configuration, or if you start to have like two different versions, like an instructor version and a regular version of your book, this is where you kind of fiddle with all of that. But what you might mess with sooner than later is the publication file. And that's where you can do stuff like scrolling down. We can configure theorems are not nulled by default. They show the proof is nulled, but not the theorem. I don't want that proof to be nulled. Let's say no. Now I'm wearing a publisher hat and making a publisher decision, but if I rebuild after making that choice and view the live preview, and then go back to that section, the proof is no longer expanded. It just shows it. You can't dismiss it either. If you don't have it nulled by default, you can't put it back. That example though is still nulled. I can go down to example and say that no, it is not nulled, rebuild, refresh. I haven't touched the assets, so that's why the hi mom now shows up. I haven't touched the assets, so all I have to do is build. Just a reminder is that when you're writing, unless you're actually changing like a figure or a picture or something, you just need to build. But if you ever wanted to change like the circle, if you wanted to add another like internal circle of radius 1, well, if I rebuild, that's not going to do anything. I have to regenerate that asset for web. Then I scroll all the way down here to this output to know that it's finished. Now if I rebuild and refresh, now we have that inner circle. So assets have to be regenerated, stuff like asymptote pictures. I installed LaTeX, so now I can actually do a LaTeX image. Now that I did, and just to remind you from earlier in the video, all the instructions generate assets help .markdown. It's just pasting this little bit of magic into the terminal and running that. That's what installed all the extra stuff. It took about 10 or so minutes in the background to do that while I was pausing the recording. But now back to my project PTX. I've changed it from asymptote to a LaTeX image. So I better do something like begin Tixie image. Picture, excuse me. And then I'll draw a circle. Center at the origin, circle, radius 3. I'll do a semicircle inside of it, or an inner circle, I should say. Generate those assets for web. Finished. Rebuild. Refresh. And now here we have, so in LaTeX, in TextZ, the thickness is obviously a lot thinner than the asymptote. But there you have it. I think that's all, unless there's anybody in chat who wants to suggest something else that I probably should put in this video. I might just call this a day. So in that case, thank you all for watching, who just watching this on YouTube. We're wrapping up this recording. And then I see we had someone just join us. So if you have any questions, just hang out. We're going to talk a bit more. But I'll be the recording for today. So thank you all for watching on YouTube. And please come by the Zooms. This is, in the spring 2023, we have Zooms every day, Monday through Friday, pretty much, with a few exceptions. Mondays are the best days to come in for getting started in tech support questions, but any other day, you're also invited. And there's generally somebody available in the Zoom to check it out. Visit us at pros.runestone.academy to learn more about our NSF project and to stay in the loop on these Zooms. There's lots of different ways you can connect via social. For email updates, I suggest going to PreTeXt Announce Google group, signing up, and I post to this reminder this week's PreTeXt Runstone's virtual drop-ins. That information shows up there every week. So have a great day, and if you're here live with us, we'll just hang out a bit longer, but thanks for watching the recording.